you know you are able to be heard right now. Still, you're able to see it. Is the YouTube feed acceptable audio-wise? I seem very quiet in it. It's kind of making me confused.
You're quiet comparison to the music, I'd say.
All right. Well, let me turn the music down. Get that down. Then I've got to get... Why is that doing? That's so weird. OBS is so fucked up sometimes. All right, let's see. Fixing the interface there. All right. Why is there... Why is there almost no noise? Why? Okay. In theory, this should be better for YouTube. Is that better generally, Estelle? I'm hoping it's better. We'll see. We'll see. It's good. All right. Excellent. Apologies everyone who's here who doesn't give a shit about this. All right. And then I'm going to do the fucking subtitles are going to be shrunk down. See if they can go really big. See how big that goes. That's fine for now. All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to a very belated start and technical issues, apparently, as we get going in Anti-Oedipus again once this week, as we head into further the Quarantine Collective's ongoing reading of Anti-Oedipus as we go into Chapter 4.5 as we make our way through the second positive text of Schizoanalysis. We're going to be rereading the paragraph we did last week, hopefully a little bit faster than we did it last week. Maybe not. I don't know. I don't determine that. Answering questions, talking about it, and making our way through and doing what we can to make our way through at least 2, maybe 3, and I think we might be able to get through 4 paragraphs today. I know, but we're going to try. So let's get over to it, and we've got, there's your PDF, excellent. You go away. All right. Where do I even start? All right. As we make our way through these tasks of schizoanalysis, they're juxtapositioning and contrasting their work for schizoanalysis against what psychoanalysis does. And they're doing it very intentionally in very particular ways because the colonialism of Oedipus, the way that it comes and joins and takes on and controls, the way that it does these things, they see as being inherently quite, we'll say simply, problematic. Would be like the nice, simple, easy way to talk about it. It's funny, there's very few people here in comparison to usual. I wonder what happened. Last week we had like 55 on YouTube and we had a whole bunch here. I'm happy to have all of you. I'm just always fascinated. As we've been making our way through, and this paragraph as thing at large where we left off last week is basically giving that critique of the ideological function of psychoanalysis, how I've been, and we've been talking through it. The things as I'm reading this to pay attention to, and we're going to try to get through this one a little bit more quickly, is to deal with the theatrical side of psychoanalysis, to critique that, the way that people when they speak of, and when a psychoanalysis, which is their position, but I would say at large in culture, when we deal with people, we tend to talk about sort of normative positions and the normative relationships that sort of exist. And when they're talking throughout here, just be watching for the critique about the way that we treat the family theatrically. Oh, mother is a certain character. Father is a certain character that does X, Y, and Z. But instead, they're talking about, well, actually, libido, desire, the impulses, the forces of life work through you and work through family and actually directly invest socially. Through these, it's not like they don't exist, but they are part of this. They are doing these things. This is the big deal. This is the more or less the critique they're making. And they really want to get at and culminate in phallocentrism and the critique of phallocentrism, the way that the phallus is not really an object or a cause of desire, which is the traditional psychoanalytic, whether Freudian or Lacanian version, but instead that it itself, by even talking of it, it is itself a castrating apparatus, a thing that artificially creates these systems and things that do this. So as I'm reading, be paying attention to that and watching for the language between the dead, the desiccated, and the non-vital versus the vitalistic and the thing that has desire pulsing through it. That's the short version of how I do that and talk about it. Let me make sure you guys can see me also in here. Well, please don't be in the wrong camera. It is. God damn it, every time. Really frustrating. 1 second. OBS virtual camera. There you are. I know it's that. And back again. Okay. One often has the impression that families have understood the lesson of psychoanalysis only too well, even from far off or by osmosis, in the air of the times. They play at Oedipus, a sublime alibi. But behind all this, there is an economic situation. The mother reduced to housework or to a difficult and uninteresting job on the outside. Children whose future remains uncertain. The father who has had it with feeding all those mouths. In short, a fundamental relation to the outside of which the psychoanalyst washes his hands, too attentive to seeing that his clients play nice games. Now the economic situation, the relation to the outside, is what the libido invests and counter-invests as sexual libido. One gets off on flux and the breaks in these flux. Let us consider for a moment the motivation that led someone to be psychoanalyzed. It involves a situation of economic dependence that has become unbearable for desire, or full of conflicts for the investment of desire. The psychoanalyst who says so many things about the necessity for money in the cure remains supremely indifferent to the question of who is footing the bill. For example, the analysis reveals that the unconscious conflicts of a woman with her husband, but the husband is paying for the wife's analysis. This isn't the only time we encounter the duality of money as a structure of external financing and as a means of internal payment, along with the objective dissimulation that it comprises, essential to the capitalist system. But it is interesting to find this essential concealment miniaturized, occupying a place of honor in the analyst's office. The analyst talks about Oedipus, about castration and the phallus, about the necessity of assuming one's sex, as Freud says, the human sex, and the necessity for the woman to renounce her desire for the penis, the man to renounce his male protest. We maintain that there is not one woman, more particularly not one child, who can, as such, assume her or his situation in a capitalist society, precisely because this situation has nothing to do with the phallus and castration, but directly concerns an unbearable economic dependence. and the woman and the children who succeed in assuming do so only by detours and determinations completely distinct from their being woman and their being child. Nothing to do with the phallus, but much to do with desire, with sexuality as desire. For the phallus has never been either the object or the cause of desire, but is itself the castrating apparatus, the machine for putting lack into desire, for drying up all the flux, and for making all the breaks from the outside and from the real into one and the same break with the outside, with the real. Like I said, a lot of critique around, focusing obviously around psychoanalysis. Is there any specific language people are having issues with before I start going sentence by sentence and doing this thing? Because if not, I'm happy to dive in.
The most important bulletin points is that is the primacy of desire before the primacy of the family, right? The investment, right? Prior.
I think yes, but again, in the context of the book, I wouldn't say before the family. It's before everything, and even the family is ultimately playing at Oedipus. That's the first line. Just to sort of jump slightly into it, like the first line here is talking about how families have actually internalized the lessons of psychoanalysis. The Oedipalized narratives of what a dad is, a mom is, what we should be, what are the excuses or justifications for various dysfunctions or functionality that a family has. Families are happy to play at Oedipus. The language they use is that of a game, and they use this a lot. Deleuze talks of this in Logic of Sense and a handful of things. The way that they speak of a game is there are rules and boundaries and ways that things deal with things, and they're very tight and simple. And playing at is that you're playing within these very tight, simplified rules, that you're playing inside of these tight, simplified things that have very little to do with like the lived experience or the way that desire's actually going through these things. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. Especially the ideal game in the logic of sense, right? And the nonsense about it, and how it, like the production of sense and these kind of things, like how it's played, right? Mm-hmm. Especially during infancy, and how kind of these things, like it's kind of like a Lewis Carroll, novel. Like you have a lot of rules, orders, customs, these kind of things, right? And you have society, which is, I don't know how to prescribe it, but you have these jubilation, right? Jubilation of rules, right? That doesn't make sense, I guess. It makes sense for me, but it doesn't make sense for others, I guess. Or I don't know.
Well, no, it's so as a child's growing, there's a lot of developmental theories out there, we'll say. I'll say I land generally with where these guys are at. But one of the ways, and it's Freud's thing, is that humanity has a particular structure already recognized or already really built in, that the way that we need to exist is as socially, and how we get past like the animalistic thing that would destroy that is by learning to curb these things, to curb your enthusiasm, actually. that desire, that setup, that thing that's pushing that would break apart society if everyone were to just follow their desires. We need to learn to curb it. And how we learn to curb it is by paying attention to our parents, understanding that mom is not an object of desire, even though she is an object of desire. And I mean it to be said like that because that's very much how psychoanalysis talks about it. And that dad is my competition for that. As a male child. A female child, slightly different setup. Father's the object, mother's the competition. But again, the rule of how you're supposed to end up is to be like the mother. These things, a parent's job is to right-size their kid, to properly Oedipalize them in psychoanalysis. We may say it slightly differently. A parent's job is to prepare their child for the world. How do you do that? Well, Is he too scatterbrained? Is he focused on too many? Isn't he not realistic about? You need to be realistic. Here's what realistic about opportunities or the world or things mean. And when we do that, we start telling these stories. And they're using the example of the family because the family is what Freud comes back to, Lacan comes back to, the structure over and over. But they're saying, no, actually, by pretending the structure is constantly recurrent, we've created a way that people are finding everything. And the reality is that all of the social world is being found in the family. It's not that the family is found in the social world. We've got shit backwards. For Freud, boy, you really have a sexual attraction to poor women. And your mother, was she poor? Oh, she was. And she was a maid? Well, therefore, it brings it back to the family. But it's just as easy to do the opposite, where you talk about the family as being social. The mother on all fours cleaning because she has to. That's the way that's social roles determining that person, putting them in that spot. But that thing I'm investing in is not mom. It's that social structure. This is what desire's coming into. This is what all of these things are. And this is what the family is doing. And the economic, the social situation, the larger scale social situation is what is behind all of this. The mother reduced to housework, difficult or uninteresting job on the outside, children whose future is uncertain, which is all children, more today, I think, than most. The fundamental relation to the outside of which the psychoanalyst washes his hands, because that's washes his hands. It's the Pontius Pilate thing. Like, I just can't. I wash my hands of all that. But it's like, that's literally what people are dealing with. Like, that's the thing that is inside of this. People are actively going through these things. And the outside is the inside. There's no outside. But psychoanalysis, by pretending there is, cuts everything off and reduces it. It's an excessive reduction. And
reducing it to the sublime, kind of
objects.
Sublime thing of the family.
Yes.
Yeah. Right.
Very much.
The sublime thing of as the alibi for the family, which is the fact is not the family. Your mother and your father is in relation to the society as you are, as such. And it's not like whether your mother is kind of a poor or these kind of things or relation. It's not internalized. Because that will create exclusion, I guess, if you kind of reduce it to the family as such. Inclusion and exclusion, I think. Or something like a language where we kind of oscillate, right? You're reducing it. It's kind of a bad consciousness. I don't know. It's kind of a bad.
No, it's very Nietzschean. Like it is playing towards that. But specifically here, and it's the line that's important, is the next little thing. The relation to the outside is what the libido invests and counter-invests as sexual libido. The relation to the outside. The relation. The idea of mom working a job. That's not it. The idea of mom, not it. Job, not it. The relation to the outside is what is sexually invested. The relation to the outside. Okay? These economic structures, the relation to the outside, is not confined to familial sexuality, which is general psychoanalytic sort of thought, but the inherent libidinality of how you relate. And it's not, again, this is not metaphor. They're not saying, oh, it's kind of like you get sort of sexually charged. It's like, no, you go fucking at it. You go at it.
Yeah.
You are fucking, that thing is sexual. One gets off on flux and the brakes in flux. Okay? The gets off is meant to be, or is an orgasm. They're not.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Like that's their point, is you actually, the flux, the brakes of flux, the setup here, these things are actually sexually pleasurable. So they're being very particular in how these things that Freud would see as a pathology of attraction or other things. Now, this is just the relation to the outside. And they get really specific in the one example that they give, which I think we can sort of extrapolate from. But they talk of the woman who goes through treatment and things have to deal with their, what is the motivation, right? as a thing. They go through and they say, one sec. For example, the analysis reveals the unconscious conflicts of a woman with her husband, but the husband is paying for the wife's analysis. This setup of how economic control masquerades as therapeutic caring. That's basically underneath it is the unconscious, but the relation to the outside is actually what is the thing. I'm going to use a little bit of language around this. It's more inexact, but again, this is because this is a tougher thing to talk about. When you go to a psychoanalyst setup or a counselor or a therapist, I think this is true across the board. The general consensus is that you want to talk to the person. Like if you're the analyst, you want to talk to the person cut off from the rest of the world. They do a great lengths in order to sort of have nothing except the room and the two of you involved in the conversation, because the idea is everything else is distraction. If it's just you, I can talk to you and all of that. Their argument is, well, actually, what you've done there is you've castrated the patient, because now they're not connecting out on things. They're not actually dealing with the world. You're not able to see where their attractions or sexual arousals are. That what you need to do is you need to understand that those relations to the outside, how you and I in that therapy section are related to the rest of the world, is actually what is driving various attractions, destructions, internal activity, and all of this. And this economic dependency that you see with the husband, for example, this is a huge deal. That a wife being dependent on the husband is kind of a huge fucking thing. Can you imagine? Some of you probably can. Being dependent on someone else probably would lead to a handful of, mental issues. And then lo and behold, having that person also be who you're dependent on to get healthy, also probably a little problematic, like in and of itself. And this is what psychoanalysis is trying to avoid the conversation of. This isn't the only time we encounter the duality of money as a structure of it's a little bit further down. This isn't the only time we encounter the duality of money as the structure of external financing and as a means of internal payment, along with the objective dissimulation that it comprises, essential to the capitalist system. Dissimulation is masking. It doesn't mean the breakdown of a simulation, which is what I thought. So just in case anyone else is dumb like me, it's a weird Frenchy term. But because money is this weird thing that is both economic relation and psychic mechanism, because it operates on both, it obscures how it works, because it kind of can do both, and we're able to sort of find that this dual function is the big deal. The dual function is capital. If you ever want to have a conversation around what capitalism is, it's this dual function is kind of center to that conversation. And so when you're talking about these elements, when these things are coming together, that's the drive. What does relation to the outside mean? I thought sexuality was private. Sexuality is not private at all. That's kind of the point, actually, is that sexuality is not private almost in any capacity. You have your non-human sexes, but you don't have them. The way that you're aroused by, reading a book or seeing a movie or walking down the street and seeing something, the sexuality only exists in that tentative connection that's being made, or the break of that connection. Sexuality is in those relations, is in those investments. There is no, this is my sexuality, here's your sexuality. That's not really how any of this works. And it's one of the big thrusts of the book is that it's about getting to that non-human sex, that pre thing, before we've said that it's X, Y, and Z. And they're going to be talking about that here in about 2 seconds, actually. So that's probably a fair thing. Does the idea of desire come more from Nietzsche or Spinoza? I actually have a video on this, the sort of thrust of what we understand modern day, like desire through Deleuze. Spinoza is a huge factor of this, but Nietzsche would be Nietzsche through Freud. is a huge one. But there's others. Hume has this. There's a lot of other people who sort of play into these things. So I have a video on that. What is desire? It's on the other pages if you want to take a look. But it is interesting to find this essential concealment miniaturized, occupying a place of honor in the analyst's office. The setting that the analyst has created mirrors, miniaturizes, and occupies the analyst's office. The ideological reproduction almost. The structural reproduction of the outside world. The broader capitalist relations brought in and tightened. This is what we try to do with the home. We try to make everything cut off from the outside, even though it's not possible, and shrunk in, pulled in as a thing. Those are the drives we sort of have inside of that. It's one of the big pushes. They continue. The analyst talks about Oedipus, castration, and the phallus, about the necessity of assuming one's sex, as Freud says, the human sex, the necessity for the woman to renounce her desire for the penis, man to renounce the male protest. The short version here is Freud, by saying that there is women have penis envy, men have to deal with the nervousness of their own castration. This is the human sexuality. And in order to be properly adjusted, this is what a man is. This is what a woman is. And by presuming that, we've started there. The analyst talks about castration, about the phallus, the necessity of assuming one's sex, the necessity for woman to renounce her desire, that you have to do this thing. But their argument, and they say it plainly, we maintain there is not one woman. More particularly, there is not one child who can assume her or his situation in a capitalist society, because the situation has nothing to do at all with the phallus and castration, but is actually directly concerning the unbearable economic dependence. A child growing in our world, which is a thing, by the way, kids are around. Their job is basically to have the weight of the world on their shoulders. Like they feel, if you don't think kids feel when you are stressed for money, or that they can't buy the toy they want, or why they can't, or when you feel embarrassed about it, no, you can't buy that because you're teaching them a lesson versus, no, we can't buy that this week, maybe next week. That little thing teaches them the relations to the outside world, creates that space, creates that thing. But with that, they have that dependence. Their relation to the outside world is dependent on the parent, is set up in that way. That is what everything is concerned about. It's not that the child or young man learns to handle his penis better, or that the woman or young girl learns that she should have one, and she just, if only she did, because she'd be better. Like fucking crazy stuff, but that's what they're doing at. That's not the thing that is doing all of this. The woman and the children who succeed in assuming that they are the woman or the child do so only by detours and determinations completely distinct from being woman or being child. The being woman, the being child, these essential things that make them up, that's not actually what psychoanalysis is driving at. These people who accept subordinate positions do so specifically through strategies that bypass or even contradict what seems to be their essential nature as woman or child, being child. Nothing to do with the phallus, but much to do with desire, with sexuality as desire. For the phallus has never been either the object or the cause, but is itself the castrating apparatus. Instead of saying that the phallus is this object, instead we should be talking about it as machinic. I know, shocking, this book. But that's really what they're driving at. It's machinic. The way it's set up, how it interacts, how it builds, how it does all these things. It's artificial scarcity. The nervousness of the phallus. Oh, that's that thing that we want. Really? There's dicks everywhere. Well, like there's dicks everywhere. There's a lot of dicks. But it's very special. This dick is special. Then it's like, okay, that's great. This is the thing they're driving for. And that's the last bit, for making all the breaks from the outside, from the real, into one and the same break with the outside and a break with the real. That's what these things drive through. It basically, they're talking about breaking with what any semblance of material reality here, more or less. I think is probably how I'd phrase it. Does that make sense to everyone? Everyone generally following acceptably? No, yes, maybe a little bit.
This kind of sentence, but it itself, the castrating apparatus, I understand that. But what about the machine for putting lack into desire, for dyeing up all the flows and making all the breaks from outside and from the real into one and the same break with the outside, with the real? It's mean that like it's, I don't know, like I didn't understand this sentence, this like last sentence, like breaking up, like breaking as it's flowing, right? Or breaking from this kind of like apparatus as such, right? Like desire is you know, like machinic desire, as you said it. But like, I don't know, this last sentence I didn't understand. So could you comment about it?
Yeah, let me. It's confusingly written, and it's kind of got a lot of. All right, let's take it bit by bit. For the phallus has never been either the object or the cause of desire, but is itself the castrating apparatus, the machine for putting lack into desire, for drawing up the flux, for making all the breaks from the outside and from the real into one and the same break with the outside and with the real. There are breaks that exist in relations with the outside world, obviously, right? Like when you deal with things, it's not there. Ship breaks, life breaks, things break. But the question is it that they are breaks? We can talk about them materially. We talk about that these are breaks or connections or all of that. The things we're giving up are from the outside world. Or is it that we're making a break with the very concept of the outside world, with the real itself? That's what psychoanalysis, that's what idealism, that's what representation does, because by playing in the space of representation, we are breaking with the outside. We are breaking with the real. That's how we separate ourselves. The Lacanian, again, they're not going in the wrong direction with Lacan. They're just taking and going, yeah, you just didn't go far enough, which is kind of Deleuze's thing. For Lacan, a child breaks with the real when they have the symbolic and imaginary. And Guattari's never disagreed with this, but his argument is that breaking with the symbolic and imaginary is not a necessity of the human condition. It's a nature of how the semiotic structure of the social order works. So if we have a break with the outside or with the real, it puts us in a spot of seeing everything representationally, non-vitalistically, idealistically, as Wendove is saying. They're speaking of idealism, because instead, if it's breaks from the outside and from the real, which is multifaceted and multitudinal and everywhere, that gets constricted and closed up into a single break with the outside, with the real. That's probably how I'd phrase it. There's a lot here that's kind of being said and talked about, but that's probably the phrasing I would end up using, because the thing to remember is when they're talking about lack, they don't say lack doesn't exist, because that would be the opposite of an affirming ontology. Instead, for them, lack is affirmatively produced. And the production of lack that happens inside of the space of representation creates and forms a connection that itself is breaking with the lived experience of the thing. The moment I take your name for you and I stop thinking of you as a complex human, and I've totalized you underneath, oh yeah, that's just Marcellus. That's what Marcellus. Then it's no longer accepting the multitude of breaks and connections and everything outside from the real, in the real, but instead it's a break with the real itself. Does that help at all?
Yeah, it helped a little bit, right? It's a break with the real, but like the real in Lacan is the impossible. It's the hard. It's something that we cannot formalize, right? But this is a radical because it's kind of with the
sort
real,
of,
which is
sort of,
yeah,
sort of. So we can talk about the real. The real is things, and again, I'm speaking a little bit out of turn here, but for Lacan, the real is things as they are.
Yeah.
And we don't have the ability to engage that because since the mirror stage and how we deal with things, we have to call things names. But their argument and Guattari's argument from the beginning with Lacan has never been getting rid of that. He's like, yeah, that's actually how symbolic structures work. Very good. But you can flip that. So when we talk about breaks from the outside or from the real, you could say they're almost organic interruptions that desire machines encounter during productive operations. Okay? Because everything is desire. Everything is desiring machines, and they're always producing. Yeah. We're actually able to engage directly with the real, because the real is what's being produced all the time. This is material reality. Other machines and things in the social field are interacting and breaking and doing shit and producing. These are productive because they're generating new connections. There's flux that is in massive rampant change. This is possibilities and potentials being created everywhere. This is a way of maintaining a connection with the outside without modifying the outside. It's engaging directly with the real. But you can sever completely, have this separation from material reality and the real production of the social world, which you're not separate from otherwise, but you can artificially create that. The phallus does this. This is what the phallus does. This is the thing the phallus does. It sets up and changes those productive interruptions into isolated elements, not a dynamic relationship that is ever changing, right? But instead a closed, self-referential bullshit system. The entire family, the entire structure, all the sophistry in the words that's made there. It's not that it's lies, it's that it's all ideality. It is breaking from the real. It is not emerging from the real. So for Lacan, it's emerging from the real. The interaction with all of these things, all of that. They're like, no, this is a breaking. This is inside of a video game. You can make up your own rules and stick to them. And everyone who joins your stupid little game, you can make up your own rules and stick with them. The rest of the game still goes on. This is desiring production does this. You have the ability to create these symbolic stories and narratives, and they can be very powerful. But when you have them as subordinate to, when you have desire subordinate to them, when they control desire, when they modify it, when they break your actual dynamic relationship with the outside, well, then now you're no longer having breaks from the outside or from the real. Now it's always a break with the outside and with the real. It's crushed into a single thing. It's fully homogenized rather than heterogeneous.
Yeah, homogeneous with the real, not barred from the real, like Lacan.
Wait. Yeah. It's homogeneous, not with the real, but from the real. So,
from the real.
So, and again, this is going to be really wording here, but what you've done is you've homogenized all of the breaks to being the break with the real. Because for Lacan, there is just one break with the real. It's the break with the real. Whereas they would argue, no, you break with reality all the time. It's just not you doing it, and it's not a total real. It's your left finger with heat here and this stimulation from here. Like, whatever it is, that all of this shit, the infinite, insane potentiality of everything becomes a sterile, singular, symbolic model. Right?
Yeah, remodeling. It's become a remodeling. Like, this is, we talking about gargantuous, like a lot of things like breaks. right?
Yes.
That flows. And you have, it's kind of similar to Marx when he said that if the Christian believe in one incarnation, the idealist philosopher has multiple kind of gods, right? Multiple incarnations, right? So yeah, I think that makes sense. It really makes sense, I guess.
Can I add on to you, Brooks? Is that cool?
Sure, of course.
I think that when I read this, I sort of look at how in each synthesis there's a break. So for the connective synthesis, it's slicing. For the disjunctive, it's detachment. For the conjunctive, it's residuum or residual or residue. And how for D&G, desiring machines work by breaking down. They function by breaking down because there's a break within each synthesis. But psychoanalysis looks at it, for example, like the conjunctive with the subject, and defines that subject via lack. Or it looks at a disjunction and defines it exclusively, right? So it's interesting that psychoanalysis and Lacan, sort of what you're getting at, Brooks, is able to kind of do this all in one big swoop. I kind of think about the paralogisms all happening simultaneously here. Psychoanalysis does this in one full swoop, where they define all of these breaks as lack, whereas D&G are saying, no, these breaks are necessary to produce reality or to produce the real. So it's not that the breaks come from outside. I think that that inside-outside dichotomy for D&G is going to be an arbitrary or erroneous one. I think that they're going to say that these breaks produce, reality. So I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, no, it's because it's a great way to go about it, because if we talk about, for example, the death drive, which we went through just a section ago, it's the same argument but just stated differently. Where for Freud, he's basically totalized you as an entire thing that has a death that you're driving towards, and that is socially determined in how it's sort of talked about. But what's happening is you're taking all of the little deaths, which are constant in desiring production. Desiring production is about the end of things. They break, they die. But all of those things that are all of the connections, you're totalizing them into a single idea of death for an idea of you, for an idea of life. And so now you're playing in a space that literally is like your own self-referential system. And that's all of this. That's what they're talking about. All of this is its own, you're building your own self-referential system that's actually, in the end, controlling all of desire, controlling and conditioning desire to do certain things or to ultimately create its own repression. That's the thing. And that's the next bit. The thing about outside, I think we're going to end up, the next paragraph is actually about that. And so I want to make sure that we will focus on it, but I kind of want to do that one next. But that's a really great point as well. No, I like that. All right, let's check chats. Break is maintenance or a sense of rest, or am I mistaken? Break is disconnection for various reasons. And there's no, see, when we start talking about it, it's rest or it's that. No, it's just break. The break's flux, the changing in things and then the ceasing of that thing. It's not you as a gigantic, huge organism. You cease to function when you die. Thus, the death drive. Thus, the way that we talk about you and me. I'm Brooks. I'm a dad. I'm these things. The wording and the setup and the symbolism and all of that create intentionality, and they build an organism around a series of incredibly complex machines that are starting and stopping constantly. But I totalize it because it's easier that way for various reasons. But instead, what's happening is all the stuff I'm talking about is actually being produced by those underlying processes that themselves are starting and breaking and continuing and trying to get back to and whatever they're doing. And then those things, as they disconnect, sensations produced, and as some level of sensation produced, the miraculating of the subject and the totality of thing completely shifts. These change. And it's probably the best way I have to sort of talk about it. It's very complex. What version of the real is real? D&G seems better. I mean, Guattari has never really, I shouldn't say that. Probably during his early studies, I don't have any idea, but in most of his writings, he doesn't embrace the real as the same way Lacan does. Lacan's very clear that the real is something we can't engage with because it's the thing that doesn't have symbolization. But their argument is, well, actually, you can deal directly with it. And in fact, we are dealing directly with it. We just name it something else. And once we start playing this abstract name game, which is incredibly powerful, and they're not saying don't have it, just know it. That's, I think, where a lot of the power is. These breaks should in no way be considered as a separation from reality. They operate along lines that vary according to whatever aspect of them we are considering. Yeah, it's harder. It's one of the harder things, to be perfectly frank. This is not easy shit, to be frank, at all. So it's when you talk about things like the rest of the world or any person or this room or this Discord room or this YouTube channel, as you're talking about it and as you're experiencing it, the effective realities of all of the connections that are being experienced are expressing themselves through you about that. And then it goes away and you're actualizing the feelings or affections around all of those things. And we're hearing it, or you're hearing me, and then you're doing the same thing again. The process never stops. It's an eternal, consistent becoming through multiplicity that never ceases. Never ceases. Curious for clarification, did you say you believe in the dichotomy or not, and believe it's a product of ego? There's no dichotomies in desiring production. Like it doesn't work that way. Things connect and disconnect, and then everything else is emergent from this process. Yeah. How much of Zizek's theory is negated due to Anti-Oedipus? It's a question about how you read it. I don't read what they're doing here as a negation of Lacanian psychoanalysis. A lot of people do. I also don't read what they're doing here as a negation of Marx. A lot of people do. I don't see, because of how Deleuze and Guattari write about what concepts are and how these things work together, I don't think we're talking about a negation of any of this. What we're talking about instead is that they are taking pieces and building, and they're building concepts. And I think there's actually some very interesting Lacanian ideas that are absolutely at work in Anti-Oedipus. If you don't see how the despotic regime and how semiotic structures under state capitalism operate through Lacanian symbolic chains and master signifiers, you're missing the point, because that shit is there. Now, is it determinate that it's that way? No. These things are socially created and built through in time and how desiring machines and production has worked. But it's absolutely Lacanian through the despotic, without a question. So it's evolution, no, but they're not destroying it. They're building concepts that work with other concepts and continue to grow. They very much talk about it like this in What is Philosophy, and it's important to keep that as you go. Let's do the next paragraph. It's a little shorter one, so it should be quite lovely. As always, like, subscribe, send a super chat, join the Patreon, patreon.com/DGQC. Line by line, here we go. Too much always penetrates from the outside. Where the analyst is concerned, too much penetrates into his office. Even the closed familial scene appears to him to be an excessive outside. He promotes the pure analytic scene, an office Oedipus and an office castration that should be its own reality, its own proof, and that, contrary to the movement, proves itself only to be only by not working, by being interminable. Psychoanalysis has become quite a stupefying drug, where the strangest personal dependence allows the clients to forget, during the time spent in sessions on the couch, the economic dependencies that drive them there in the first place. A bit like the way of decoding of flux entails a reinforcement of bondage. Do these psychoanalysts who are Oedipalizing women, children, blacks, and animals know what they're doing? We dream of entering their offices, opening the window and saying, "It smells stuffy in here. Some relation with the outside, if you please." For desire does not survive cut off from the outside, cut off from its economic and social investments and counter-investments. And if there is, to use Freud's terms, a purely erotic motive, it is certainly not Oedipus that harbors it, nor the phallus that actuates it, nor castration that transmits it. The erotic, the purely erotic motive pervades the social field, wherever desiring machines are agglutinated or dispersed in social machines, where love object choices occur at the meeting place of the two kinds of machine, following lines of escape or integration. Will Aaron leave with his flute, which is not a phallus, but a desiring machine and a process of deterritorialization? Moses' brother. This is a biblical reference, by the way, which is fine. Let's go bit by bit. Too much always penetrates from the outside where the analyst is concerned. Too much penetrates into his office. They're making fun of psychoanalysis here. The analyst basically has an extremely paranoid position. And this is something Freud and Lacan and Zizek have written about. It's a naturally paranoiac position because external reality, the things happening right outside of those doors, they threaten the safety, the control, the order of the psychoanalytic environment, the room. Again, that's why you have certain shades. That's why the rooms are quieter, soundproofed, or in specific types of places. And the way that they drive this is about anxiety, sexual anxiety, I'd argue, but definitely about anxiety and the outside world possibly intruding. Because even in the closed familial scene, appears to him, an analyst, to be an excessive outside. Because there's a dehors excessive, there's an abhorrent, dehors excessive. There's a intolerance for external interference. Again, the paranoiac thing, even to family dynamics. There's a reason that they control the questions. They don't just let you talk about everything. It's important about when these things come in. But if the family is their domain, why the fuck are they like this? This minimal social unit still threatens it. What if you were to be doing the wife and analyzing her and the husband were there too? Well, that's too much. That's too much. But wouldn't you be able to learn a lot? No, it's too much. That's for couples counseling. I don't give a shit about that. That's not my thing. This setup is paranoiac par excellence. And it's one of the things they keep sort of driving to over and over and over. Because the analyst, they say, he promotes the pure analytic scene, an office Oedipus, office castration, that should be its own reality, its own proof, and that, contrary to the movement, proves itself only by not working, by being interminable. This artificial self-contained world that is made here, that people spend their lives in, that people are taught as parents with children. They said that families with osmosis. I grew up in a world where people talked about these things, like the Oedipalization of the family was very normalized, and it is today amongst very conservative circles. You hear it all the time. It's kind of wild. But this self-contained world where these things are naturally only like a theatrical performance disconnected from material reality as it exists, it validates itself precisely because it doesn't achieve its goals. It proves itself by not working, by being interminable. Psychoanalysis doesn't cure. It works through things, but it won't cure you. It's very important for them how they talk about these things. It's a big deal for psychoanalysis that they don't talk about it being a solution. Because they won't. They'll talk. It's a lifelong thing for these people.
Lacan, similar to Lacan, but in different phrasing. He said psychoanalysis, you're the cure of yourself, right? You're kind of hinting at the subject, right? You're part of your symptom, right? Yep. And psychoanalysis is not about cure. It's about work, Arbeit in German, Arbeit, werken, Arbeit, work,
Yes.
labor. That's it.
Yes. Yeah. And that's the joke they make. Psychoanalysis has become quite a stupefying drug, where the strangest personal dependence allows the clients to forget, during the time spent in sessions on the couch, the economic dependencies that drive them there in the first place. Hey, why don't you come in and I'm going to have you talk about your families, and you're going to be here for long enough that you're going to actually forget that the outside world has a lot of shit going on that's actually creating the anxiety that actually is your problem. That's what they're shitting on here. Yeah. Well, that's, yeah. It's a strange phrasing. Dependencies that drive. In the original, they use slightly different language that really implies the economic and sexual implications of things. It entails a reinforcement of bondage. There's specific phrasing that they really want to drive there. It's economic and sexual implications of these things. The way the decoding of flux entails a reinforcement of bondage. That last phrase, as flux is decoded, it entails a reinforcement. This is the deterritorialization, reterritorialization, the way these things fall about. We have things decoding, the flux is decoded, but an axiomatic is created, which ultimately creates bondage. This is the drive that's constantly happening. This is how capitalism functions. Traditional bonds are lifted. Capitalism frees people only to reinforce bondage in a different way, through new forms of servitude. It's been a thing they've said throughout all of this, and that's kind of the idea. People come in, and the outside world, the dependence on things, and all of these nightmares that you're stressed about work, stressed about money, stressed about making payments, is blah, 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 tax things or divorce or all of this. All of these external problems go away because we get to have our little playground. And in that little playground, those dependencies then end up basically controlling as well. And as they're existing, do these psychoanalysts who are Oedipalizing women, children, blacks, and animals know what they're doing? The phrase here, and again, this is all about normativity. That's why they talk about women, children, blacks, and animals. They're dependent. And they don't mean that in the sense of like, oh, black people are dependent on whites. They're minorities that are in excessively white privileged areas, especially in the 70s. Like, can you imagine the difference between then and now? And now ain't great. But that thing, the structure of marginalized groups as they exist in the world. And here you have an analyst saying, no, it's not the fact that you're a woman, a child. It's not that you're a minority. It's not that you're it's not that you're trans or homosexual or queer or Mexican. Those aren't doing it. It's your relationship with your mom and dad. The rest of the social structure that's creating the nightmares you live in, that's not it. Why would that be it? Well, I can't obviously have anything to do with that. And that's the point they have here. Patriarchal, white male patriarchal power is sort of built in to a lot of things that we exist within. And I would argue that they're doing this to make a point. It's polemic, but the ability to say that they're Oedipalizing white men as well, because they are, but they're doing it differently. They're doing it differently. And it's kind of psychoanalysis treats most things as incidental or to the person. This is about systematic oppression and participation in it. So it's a different setup. We dream of entering offices, opening the windows and saying, it smells stuffy in here. Some relation to the outside, if you please. Haha, joke, joke, joke. They're not very good at humor, but that's kind of their setup here. Opening the world and saying, hey, look, it's stuffy in here. You've created a space that's basically head up your own ass, smelling your own farts over and over and over. Let's open the window and let the rest of the world in and see how relations actually exist. Because desire does not survive cut off from the outside, cut off from economic and social investments and counter investments. Yeah, desire dies, and doesn't become purified. That's psychoanalysis. Like, oh, we're getting to. They talk about it like this too. Lacan does, Zizek does. That there's a more pure psychoanalytic situation when you're actually cut off and you're actually able to just deal with the person, the analyst hand. And it's like, no, it's death. It's not purification. That's just like, there's no engagements. There's no things happening. There's no vitality happening. And if there is, to use Freud's terms, a purely erotic motive, it's certainly not Oedipus that harbors it, nor the phallus actuates it, nor castration that transmits it. The goal for that is to get at the idea that the erotic motive is something that exists emergently and organically rather than something that's mediated. A mediated sexuality is not a sexuality. That would be the human sexuality is naturally mediated. That's probably how I'd phrase that. I think that's how I'd phrase that. Yeah, the purely erotic motive pervades the social field. Wherever desiring machines are agglutinated or dispersed in social machines, where love object choices occur at the meeting place of two kinds of machine, following lines of escape or integration. The erotic is Bataillean thinking, but erotic energy is everywhere. It's not contained in private spaces. There is no such thing as private erotism. It's not a thing. Love object choices, as they say, actually occur at the intersection between desiring and social machines. That's where sexual desire pops up. And it's the trajectories that follows are the big deal. This is the thing that pervades the social field. This is the thing they're driving at over and over and over. And they make that last joke here. I have always read this as Aaron as being the brother of Moses. Will Aaron leave with his flute, not a phallus, a desiring machine, process of deterritorialization? This fits into a weird Bible story about Moses' brother and the flute being musical, not sexual. Symbolism, being symbolism. And realizing that it itself is actually not that it's not a phallus, but it's a desiring machine and process of deterritorialization. These connections, what it does is productive. It isn't representational. It is moving away from fixed territories towards a different type of becoming. That's how I'd phrase it. Because like Aaron had his flute, and a lot of people. So I want to. Who fucking did that? Who was that? Who did the rereading of that story? I'm trying to remember who wrote that analysis that they're referring to, where the flute was phallic, and that's what he was doing, and that's why he was carrying it with him, and it was about castration of man. This whole fucking thing. But that's not the jam that they're going at. Like, instead of seeing the flute as phallic, they want us to understand it as desire machine and process of deterritorialization. It is itself a creative element, creative instrument, that is enabling becoming rather than fixed representation. Because the outcome doesn't matter. The outcome's open, which is the point. It's not about what it is, it's about what it does, and that leaves it open. Is closes it off, creates barred value. Yeah, that's how I'm gonna say that. I like that. That's okay. I was up too late last night, did a stream, and then couldn't get to bed afterwards. It's terrible. Terrible. Yeah, that's better. On this, things that are sticking in your head, things that are troublesome, things that are going. Knowing that the next, because we're going to definitely do the next paragraph. I think we're going to make it through 2 more. The next paragraph is a cap to this. It's also not a super long one, but it does cap off this as a thing and puts us in a spot where it's going to be talking about the nature of how all of this, even if they give everything, like even if we give psychoanalysis everything, that's how the next paragraph begins. And they make their final sort of critique of these things. What is meant here by desire dying when cut off from the outside? Well, I mean, let's say you're sitting somewhere and it's a white room and there's nothing there. Boredom would be a cute way to put it, but I think it's a special kind of crushing boredom because you end up playing inside of your own head at that point. There's nothing for desire, the impulses to interact with, to bounce off of, to react to be distracted by. There's nothing for desire to connect to in a empty white room. See the movie Symbol if you haven't. Symbol's wonderful. And so desire dies. Desiring machines have to connect. They connect or they disconnect and they die. When they die, they're not around no more. A psychoanalyst goes to great lengths, and I think a lot of therapists and counselors do the same thing, to create a space that is distracting in the ways they like, not really connected to the rest of the world. Think of a child in a room. They'll play with everything because they're curious, but they want the outside and they will constantly try. If you create a classroom that doesn't have those connections, it's very specific, that puts them in a specific direction, that aims them at certain things, at some point desire dies and there's no new connections. There's no setup for there. Instead, because desire is still pumping, it's still going, the paranoiac shows up and you begin self-referentially playing in your head. Desire is only produced. Desire is produced through the connection of desire and production. Without desire and production, there's no desire. None. No problem. The first section of the book actually goes over that a decent amount, and then desiring machines, the entire first section of the book, goes, I think, pretty well at length. Noah has a handful of, he'll link in the chat since he's here. He'll link his blog in the chat since he's here. Where he goes over the first.
Of course I'm here, man. Come on, you're calling me out, bro.
I'm calling you out for not posting and getting that fucking link posted, you motherfucker. Sure, come on. Yeah, he's got a lovely blog that goes through AO, especially the early parts, and really breaks down every little detail. Because, and I hope I'm not calling you out here. This is not the intention, because I went through this too. There comes a point where you go, wait, what? Wait, what? And what are they saying? And you realize either you go, oh, they're just being metaphorical. They're not. And you misread everything. Or you go, okay, let's try this. And you really read every single fucking thing. And you realize they actually have a very cohesive system that is incredibly detailed. 2.2 is way further than we need. All of 1.0, all 1.1, 1.2, 1.3. If you want to give that a read, Roxana, I think it'd be really helpful to understanding desire and how it works. But it's a lot, and I won't say otherwise. We'll continue. Does anyone else have anything? Let me check. There was a story of a girl who's kept in an attic for many years, and once released, she was like a zombie death inside. Yeah, it's not like solitary confinement's considered cruel and unusual by most civilized nations for a reason. But it's because of these kinds of things. We understand how these things really do work. But we want to cut them off because what we want is we want you to see things symbolically, for you to associate things representationally, because that kind of capture gives room for capitalism to have a much easier time, to be frank. Really, to be frank, that's basically where we're at. To continue. Let us suppose that we are granted everything. It will only be granted afterward. It is only afterward that the libido would invest the social field, that it would participate in the social and metaphysical, which permits the preservation of the fundamental Freudian position, according to which the libido must be desexualized in order to perform such investments, but begins with Oedipus, me, father, and mother, the pre-Oedipal stages relating structurally or eschatologically, it's a hell of a word, to the Oedipal organization. We have seen that this conception of the afterward implied a radical misunderstanding with regards to the nature of the actual factors. For either the libido is caught up in molecular desiring production and knows nothing of persons, just as it knows nothing of the ego, even the most undifferentiated ego of narcissism, since its investments are already differentiated, but differentiated according to the pre-personal regime of partial objects, singularities, intensities, gears, and parts of machines of desire, where one would have a hard time recognizing mother, father, or me. We have seen how contradictory it was to invoke the partial objects to make them representatives of parental persons or the supports of familial relations. Or, on the other hand, the libido invests persons in an ego, but is already caught up in a social production and social machines that do not merely differentiate them as familial beings, but as derivatives of the molar aggregate to which they belong under this regime. This is actually, as much as the language is using a lot of jargon, this is actually the jam. This is actually the jam, just letting you know. It's actually the jam. Let us suppose that we are granted everything. Afterward, by the way, is a really specific psychoanalytic term, and we're going to be kind of talking about that as we make our way through it. If wanting to read Rière, I think we have a group on Rière. Oh, we did. I think they're taking a break right now, but doing, who is it that they're switching to? Cybernetic theory through, can't remember who. But we have Rière readings all over AO, by the way, Noah. And they're great. I'm a big fan. Rière is wild. Rière is foundational. I didn't even know that. I hadn't read anything by him, and someone here started the reading, and I went, good fucking God. Ugh. God. All right. Let us suppose we're granted everything. It will only be granted afterward. Granted, accorded, probably better. Granted is complicated, because of all of the connotations it has in English. But when you say granted, this is like the authorization or permission, but also as an intellectual concession. Granted, I have hair like a fucking troll doll. That the concession and the permission that goes with it. It's an emphasis around irony, and that's kind of important as we talk about here, because this is them adopting the position of psychoanalysis. This is mocking it because of the way they use the word afterward, because it's like a temporal trap that undermines the very concession that we just did. So, and that's kind of the thing they're being a dick about here. Don't worry about it. We'll be getting through it. It's only afterward that the libido, the forces, the energy, the libidinal forces, would invest the social field, that it would participate in the social and the metaphysical. Only afterward means that there is a chronological priority of family. Only afterward would they invest the social field, that it would participate in social and metaphysical. The whole thing here is about the conditionality of it. Would invest in the social field, would participate, which is in quotes, and it's intended to be like pretty sardonic, actually, in the social field as a thing. Don't worry, this is them being very sarcastic, but making a very, very strong point, which permits the preservation of the fundamental Freudian position, according to which libido must be desexualized in order to perform such investments, but begins with Oedipus, me, father, and mother. This is the general idea that psychoanalysis puts forward, that must be desexualized and must begin from this position. We have seen this conception of the afterward implied a radical misunderstanding with regard to the nature of the actual factors. And this is the long bit. For either the libido is caught up in molecular desire and production and knows nothing of persons, just as it knows nothing of ego, even the most undifferentiated ego of narcissism, since its investments are already differentiated, but differentiated according to the pre-personal regime of partial objects, singularities, intensities, gears, and parts machines of desire, where one would have a hard time recognizing mother or father or me. This is desire and production. This is what they're like, hey, the libido is caught up. The energy is caught up into molecular desire and production, and it has no idea of ego, Brooks, mom, dad. Its investments are already differentiated. The investments are there. They're already differentiated before we get to mommy, daddy, me. They're invested in the structures, already differentiated because of the pre-personal regime of partial objects, singularities, intensities, gears, and parts, where really all of that together would have a hard time recognizing mother, father, or me. How do you recognize just the parts? You can't. The organism is mom. The symbol is mom. But mom is a multitude of parts of things. So are you. So is dad. It doesn't work this way. You can't set them up that way. Well, dad is these partial objects. That doesn't really work either. Dad's the penis, and mom's the breasts and the caring and all of that. Well, really? Because what if X, Y, and Z? Like, doesn't work that way. Because if libido operates at a molecular level, and that's kind of what this whole thing's about at this point, if it's operating at a molecular level, it functions by those pre-personal mechanical connections that do not have anything to do with familial connections or persons at all. There's no personal criteria that drives desire. It is necessarily the differentiation that exists according to the intensive, not the personal criteria. Or, on the other hand, the libido invests persons in an ego, but is already caught up in social production and social machines that do not merely differentiate them as familial beings, but as derivatives of a molar aggregate to which they belong under this regime. And here's to me, the kill shot. This is the kill shot of representational thought. The libido invests in persons in an ego, but to do so, and this is Lacan, this is Freud, this is, I think, just pure logic within these systems, is already caught up in the social systems necessarily that are there, that exist there, the way these relations work, and they're already caught up in it. These things don't merely differentiate them as familial beings, but as derivatives of that aggregate to which they belong under this other regime. Bad. Basically, they're like, it's this or this. And one of them makes sense and the other really, really, really fucking doesn't, because psychoanalysis can't account for this last part, the relationship between personal and social dimensions. It doesn't. It presumes everything is a personal dimension, which is weird because there's a temporality. Which one comes first? For psychoanalysis, for Lacan, it's you build the family first. But I don't know how that works. And it doesn't really make sense because ultimately we end up already socially invested. That does come first. The pre-personal, the partial objects have to have meaning in order for us to put these things together. Or is what we're doing, we're starting at the very end of the game, that final thing, that large aggregate order of symbols, and everything is derivative from that. And everything is that. Instead of libido beginning with family and moving to society, either libido operates pre-personally, which makes family irrelevant, or it operates through already socially created people. What is mom and dad? Well, they're social determinations. It's stupid to say otherwise. They're very much social determinations. Well, then those are already socialized persons. So, but also, if we begin with family and move to society, the family structure and priority just collapses. This entire thing is like a death shot for me, for psychoanalysis, is how I read it. It's a hell of a piece.
Because starting with family is a reductionist method. It's a reductionist absurdum method.
Yes.
Like it's a familiar beings, right? Like at the end of the day, the familiar beings are derived from the molar aggregate, right? And it doesn't make sense that you have a beginning of a science that recognizing personal relationships, and doesn't recognize the desire from the outside, right? It's kind of like The Holy Family by Marx.
I mean, that's why the entire second section of the book is called The Holy Family of Anti-Oedipus. The entire second section is called that because that's what they're mocking as an idea. Because if we're talking at a basic level, like here's the dilemmas of psychoanalysis. Like this is the dilemma. We either are going to start with family, which moves then to society, one then becomes the other, which means that like libido operates pre-personally or it operates through already socialized persons. And regardless, the family structure isn't transcendent. Like and this is again, they're driving at a point here. The family's not the thing. Desire doesn't really do that. Instead, desire is actually directly and immediately social. It doesn't begin with family and move afterward to broader domains. It doesn't do the other side of finding this weird shit. The family is not the center. The social is. The social and metaphysical dimensions of everything is almost simultaneous. It's not really temporal the way that Freud and psychoanalysis requires it. Yeah, I think that's how I'd phrase it. Does this mean I can shit on Lacanians by pointing out their hyperfixation on my speech is flawed and they ignore the context of person's speech? You don't need to shit on Lacanians. They're Lacanians. They're already confused as they are. Have pity. I'm wondering if D&G mentioning afterwards. Well, so afterward in here is 100% intended because it's one of the paralogisms. The afterward is like the big core critique. One second, let me pull up my paralogism sheet. Hey, look, your blog's like the first thing that comes up. That's good. The afterword, that of the whole persons, their core of their critique of representation. Psychoanalysis basically puts social repression second to psychic. The social necessarily comes afterward. Social repression is not real. It's an internal thing that you must work through, that you have power over yourself and you can find your way through that. The afterward, the whole person that comes at the end of the process that we then claim at the beginning of it, that's literally the joke that they're making by using the term afterward here. It would only be granted afterward. It's only afterward that they're very much being dicks here by using that term, Noah. Very much. Very, very much. Because that's, I'll just read your comment.
Are they saying that for psychoanalysis, are they trying to say that? Because I just read Freud's A Child is Being Beaten, and it seems like he, retroactively places Oedipus onto, whatever happened to the patients as children. Whereas, when you start with it, the father was completely absent within their traumas and history or whatever. So are they just saying that? Because they do say we are, suppose we are granted everything. I guess I'm confused. Suppose we are right. It still doesn't matter to the psychoanalyst because the afterward retroactively, imposes itself upon our project. I'm a little confused.
Trying to think about how to phrase a response to that, because it is again, the writing is a little funny there. So for Freud, everything necessarily begins with the family. So and I'm not going to be, I'm trying not to correct your language around how to read a child has been beaten, but the way that Freud talks about it is that it is first the interaction that is presumed within family structures, and then afterward, the broader social and metaphysical domains are invested. That's the thing that they're ironically upfront saying, let's just do that. Cool, we do that. And that's, again, why they're being kind of a dick about this, because it's basically them showing, hey, by the way, there is in psychoanalysis explicitly a temporal deferral that's happening with this. It starts with the family and then goes to social. They're not going to argue that it starts from social and goes to the family. That's not what they're doing. They're saying, no, if we grant psychoanalysis everything, we would grant it afterwards. If we grant all of this, we give the idea of the family as a thing and that this stuff happens, there is still a temporal issue in how these things process. Freud talks about it. It starts with the family always, and then it gets made into social things. Libido must be desexualized to be social. And that's what the Oedipal structure does for Freud, right? So the temporality here is kind of the thing that is serving to be where their critique lands. And they see that it's just a huge misunderstanding of the way the forces actually constitute reality. So with psychoanalytic thought, they say, here's the temporal sequence. Either libido is operating at the molecular level of desire and production, in which case it knows nothing of persons. And it basically deals with pre-personal regimes of partial objects, singularities, intensities, and machine parts, where familial persons would be unrecognizable. This is they're stating some pretty big things here I kind of don't want to get into because it's Kleinian and it's really going into some stuff. But they're saying, like, if this is true, let's grant it that we start with the family and how you react to that goes social. Okay? This would mean that the libido begins and is formed pre-family, pre-personally. And if it's pre-personal, if it's in partial objects, how would it ever recognize mom, dad, me in order to become familialized, in order to be sublimated into that social thing? How does family show up there? Or is it that the libido begins invested in persons and ego? But if that's the case, those are constituted by the social machines and necessarily derivative of their character from the molar aggregates. Correct. They're criticizing the idea of afterward.
Yeah, no, thank you. I feel like you completely cleared that up. It's just like the idea that there needs to be an afterward, i.e. family first, society, or blah, blah, blah.
That's why it doesn't read...
Production is always social, right? Like, that's their point.
If you read it in French, and again, the way that they go about this, it makes a lot more sense when you realize they're being dickish in that way that works really well in French, but not in English. Because it sounds like them saying, suppose we're granted everything, like neutrally. It does not read like that in French. It is... like it feels like there's a little, again, it's the tonality of what they do and the wording that they choose, I think, that sort of drives that. But they're making a point that no matter what, even if we give you everything, this shit's granted afterwards. So what the fuck? Like, that's kind of their point, is like, it's only going to be granted afterwards. We can't grant you this shit libidinally. Like, libido has to be invested in mom and dad. How? And then how does it become that? Like, the temporality of this is itself broken at a basic level, more or less. The afterward is the thing. Ugh. This like kills my brain. This stuff kills my brain. This is a lot, because this is that awful place where I basically have to explain the thing that they're destroying, but I have to do it in a way that doesn't make it sound great. Like, because we, in our second reading, I got really good, because I spent a lot of time with Freud. I got really good at arguing Freud's points, but I'm less good at the time of arguing D&Gs, and it would sound like I was making a point. This gets fucking difficult to start talking about. God damn it. But yeah, so this is this is the grounding, the foundation that's going to be coming in the next little bit, or has been about all of this. The desiring machines necessarily are immediately social. Am I wrong, Estelle? That's how I read it in the French. It's got a little bit more of an edge to it, where it's like, suppose we do that. Like it's got a little bit more of that than the flat English version. But maybe that's just because I read French with a snarky accent in my head. Yeah. I think it reads slightly differently. It's very interesting, though. Let us suppose afterward we are granted everything. It will only be granted afterward. It is only afterward that libido would invest the social field. It would make social and metaphysical things. See, that's the phrasing of this, the participation. God. See, now I'm even rereading the French, and I'm like, that's not.
There's difference between participate and make, I don't know, like making, creating, right?
Yeah, it's because Ferré and Estelle is anyone French is cringing. I know whenever I speak it, but like that's what's in quotes is Ferré. But participate in the social metaphysical field is not the same as that. Ferré is would make or would do. That's not participating. That's up front. Like that just changes. It's only afterwards the libido would invest the social field, that it would make social and metaphysical, that would make the social and the metaphysical, which permits saving the basic Freudian position according to which the libido must desexualize itself in order to operate these investments, such investments. But begins with Oedipus, myself, father, and mother. It reads, see, the English is so hard for this, but that's, participate is such a light word. The verb faire, oh. So how does that then read, Estelle? Would make. Yeah, participate is not the word. Participate is like, I don't know. Is anyone else? Again, English is funny this way, but participate is like a neutral thing. I participated in the game. I took part. I just was like amongst other actors or things in it. But would make is a little bit different. It's very different.
This translator Brooks is the bozo. I will say that.
No, these things are tough to get across, and you do what you can when you translate. I've been reading a lot more translations lately, and I have like a grain of salt I take a lot of it with, but I've just finished La Poujade's translations of Deleuze's lectures on painting, and he's a masterpiece of a translator. And it's because he has maybe one of the best understanding. It's Daniel Smith's the same way. Daniel Smith, who did Klasowski and a handful of other Deleuze pieces, their understanding of these thinkers is so fucking amazing. And it's ensconced in this huge amount of work that they also have. So when they're translating, they're doing the same thing as the other translators who are trying to figure out how to communicate Deleuze's idea in a different language. But I don't think these guys have, like, some of this is just really off, but this one's really annoying me. I keep looking over and going, participate or would make social. But again, it's like, what the fuck, dude? Would make the things that are social and metaphysical.
To clarify, no, I think your explanation was good. To clarify, at the end of this paragraph, though, are they saying that there can't be an afterword because either libido is molecular and there are no kind of global persons, or it's molar and there are. Like, I'm confused with that either or. Like, for either the libido.
No, this is not them. Neither of these is them saying, here's what is. Both of them are saying, here's why one's stupid and here's why the other part's stupid.
Okay, sorry. I think I'm misreading this. This paragraph's just tough. Sorry.
No, it is. All of these end paragraphs take fucking forever once we start getting into them because of this. But the whole thing is critique here. They're not building yet. The next paragraph is them building. This is just purely them explaining, hey, this is why this is broken. This is why this is broken, this is broken, this is broken, this is stupid, don't do this, don't do that. The dilemma created by the temporality of one coming than the other, which it always is. You have sexual desire, which is modified and handled by your family, generated through that process. And then that becomes desexualized for us to handle things socially. Right? That's Freud. Well, then how the fuck does it deal with family? Either it starts before family, how would sex recognize it, or it starts in the family, and if that's the case, then what the fuck? For either it's cut up in molecular design production, knows nothing of persons, or it invests persons in ego, but is already caught up in social production, social machines that do not merely differentiate them as familial, but as derivatives of a molar aggregate to which they belong under this regime. We're going to continue, though, because I think the next little bit is important. Unless anyone has a last question, I will open it up if anyone has more questions on this. Because this paragraph's fun. This is Oedipus. Countdown, race for death. Countdown, race for death. That's what's coming, just so you know. Because it is indeed true that the social... One sec, I want to make sure I didn't miss anything. Hello, James. I wouldn't knock the translation so quickly. I am knocking the translation so quickly. I am knocking the translation. It is indeed true that the social and the metaphysical arrive at the same time in accordance with the two simultaneous meanings of process, as the historical process of social production and as the metaphysical process of desiring production. But they do not come afterwards. Lindner's painting again asserts its presence. It's the fat, round little kid. I don't know how else to describe it. Fat little happy kid who's got his little toys and he looks like, I don't know, Tweedledee's bastard child. Like that painting is the one we're talking about. Where the turgid little boy has already plugged a desiring machine into a social machine, short-circuiting the parents, who can only intervene as agents of production and anti-production, in one case as in the other. There is only, I think that's a great way to describe him. There is only the social and the metaphysical. If something crops up afterward, it is certainly not the social and metaphysical investment of the libido, the unconscious syntheses. Rather, on the contrary, it is Oedipus, narcissism, and the entire series of psychoanalytic concepts. The factors of production are always actual, and are so from the tenderest age. Actual does not signify recent, as opposed to infantile, but rather in action, as opposed to what is virtual and will come about under certain conditions. Oedipus is virtual and reactional. Let us consider the conditions under which Oedipus arrives, an aggregate of departure, transfinite, constituted by all the objects, agents, and relations of socio-desire and production, is reduced to a finite, familial aggregate as an aggregate of arrival, a minimum of 3 terms, which one can and even must augment, but not to infinity. Such an application, in fact, presupposes a fourth, extrapolated, mobile term, the symbolic abstract phallus charged with performing the folding or the correspondence, but this application effectively operates on the 3 persons who constitute the minimum familial constellation, or on their substituents, father, mother, child. One does not stop there, since the 3 terms tend to be reduced to 2, either in the scene of castration, where the father kills the child, or in the scene of the terrible mother, where the mother kills the child or the father. And from 2, we pass to 1 in narcissism, which in no way precedes Oedipus, but is its product. That is why we speak of an Oedipal narcissistic machine, at the end of which the ego encounters its own death, as the zero term of a pure abolition that has haunted Oedipalized desire from the start, and that is identified now at the end as Thanatos. 43210, Oedipus is a race for death.
What the hell is that?
Oh, yeah.
I understand the last sentence, Thanatos, which is like
Death
Earth
drive.
and Thanatos. Yeah, the death drive, right? But like the constellation, right? What's he mean about the constellation?
Oh, we'll
At
get
the
there.
end of, yeah.
We'll get there, because what they're doing through here basically is they're beginning the process of actually saying, oh, here's what's happening. Because again, they're not going to say Oedipus and symbols aren't something, that there is no such thing as representation and you've got ideological wool pulled over your eyes. That ain't it. These things are working. They are producing. Oedipus is virtual. It's a thing, but it's a virtual, not an actual. It's a thing conditioning. All of this is conditioning. And so here is where they go, here's how things are actually functioning through this deeply oppressive system psychoanalysis is putting through. And they open up. It is indeed true that the social and metaphysical arrive at the same time, in accordance with 2 simultaneous meanings of process, as is Simondon, as the historical process of social production, the metaphysical process of desiring production. The dual aspect exists, but they're not separate. Again, remove dichotomies from this. The material, political, economic dimension of things, as well as the ontological, productive dimension of desire. 2 simultaneous meanings of process. These things together, right? And that's the line. These arrive at the same time. They do not come afterwards. That's a direct reference to the last paragraph. No, they do not come afterwards. Ha 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 ha. That's kind of their line. They do not come afterwards. But the whole point here is that there is no sequential development of them. They come at once. They work together in this way. I did my piece on Simondon. This is Simondoni, which is not a word, but it sounds great. The way things come about and sort of reinforce each other, but we separate them, we build them into 2 different things that seem to be countering each other, but the only reason they're able to work together is because they do counter each other, so they're actually part of the same process. This is what's happening here. It's a whole refutation of the entire idea of sublimation. The one doesn't come after the other. They come at once in force. And they use the example of Lindner's child. Turgid like a dick. The turgid little boy like a aroused penis. That's not a fucking enflé. It's swollen. It's not just sexual arousal. It's not really arousal, but it's the turgid swollenness that he's got. He's already plugged a desiring machine into a social machine, short-circuiting the parents who can only intervene as agents of production and anti-production in one case, as in the other. There is this huge amount of productive energy in this swollen child. He is rock hard. He is energy swollen with it. And he's already plugged in. Like, the painting isn't about him building a machine. He's already got it. He's there. He's going. He's already connected. This isn't a sequential thing. These things are connected. They're already coming at once. And he's directly interfacing with all of it, bypassing the family. If there's ever a line that I think parents understand, it's the idea that you can only intervene as agents of production and anti-production in one case and the other. You ain't stopping it. You're not creating it. You're part of the process in one way or another. There is only the social and the metaphysical. This is il n'y a qui. That's not how you pronounce that at all, but in French, it's extremely stark exclusion. There is only the social and the metaphysical. That's it. There is no familial mediation that's there. There is no third term of the phallus. Things are social production and metaphysical desire. There is no intermediary. There is no mediation. Right? And yeah, the boy is locked in, Noah, but it's more than that. That he's swollen, he's connected, he's locked in, but he's also filled with potential. He's filled with the libidinal desire. And it's all sex. It's not human sex. It's not fuck energy. It's connective energy. Libidinal desire, the impulses. It's not sexual in the human sense. It's sexual in desiring production sense. That's what
the arousal, right?
Yes. His passions are aroused.
Yeah.
If something crops up afterward, it is certainly not the social and metaphysical. Oh, no. Certainly not the social and metaphysical investments of the libido, the unconscious syntheses. Rather, on the contrary, it is Oedipus, narcissism, the entire series of psychoanalytic concepts. If something comes afterwards, if this happens, and they're not saying it has to, but if it does, right? If something crops up, if this comes about, the thing that they're firing at specifically is that it's a productive operation and how it operates. It is a reversal of the other. If something crops up afterwards, it is not the social and metaphysical investments of libido. Those come at once and are there. The thing that comes up is Oedipus, narcissism, the entire series of psychoanalytic concepts. The factors of production are always actual. Now, actual and virtual is a really fucking tough to lose thing, and Bergson thing, and a lot of other things. I have a video on it explicitly because I've been asked a bunch, please, dear God, explain it, and it's worthwhile because it's not easy. But the actual is not, at any point, and they say that in here, the actual is not something that is, it's not juxtaposing possible and real. We often do this. Is that possible? Oh no, this is real. I have this in my hands. I really do. That's the possible and the real. Which is a stupid set of categories because anything's possible and real is kind of like, I guess it's real even if it's only possible, but after I experience it, it's still real, but maybe it's possible again. It's just stupid. Instead, the virtual is the space of potential that's constantly sort of charging over and doing that. It is just as real as the actual. Yes, the virtual is real too. Yeah, the actual is real. Neither is possible is not really the category. All of it's real. The actual is the thing that we actualize, the present, the active, that which comes. The virtual is the potential and conditional. So productive factors operate from birth onward, and they operate as present forces, not potential developments that must be activated at certain points. The factors of production are always actual. The factors of production are always actual. They are always present. They are always active, and are so from the tenderest age. Actual does not signify recent as opposed to infantile, but rather inaction as opposed to what is virtual and will come about under certain conditions. The material active forces that are permanently present and actual, that spawn from the earliest infancy of us, doesn't mean that they are more recent and non-infantile. They don't want to make us think, it's now we have mature versions of it versus the infantile, which is childish. It means present activity as opposed to the virtual. The distinction is incredibly important. The virtual is what will come about under certain conditions, but that's not about what's possible. This is a huge thing. This is Bergson's Matter and Memory. If you want to really get into this, Bergson's Matter and Memory. Bergson's Matter and Memory. But I have a video on this that I actually think does a very, very good job of explaining it. Probably one of the ones I'm most proud of because it's a very difficult concept. But it's important to understand actual, because here's the thing, the actual, as it's happening, becomes part of the virtual and conditions of the virtual too. These are not distinct, wholly distinct things. It's wildly different than how people view things. Oedipus is virtual and reactional. I mean, this is making the point and driving it home. It is reactionary. Reaction is they're being very specific about its use, and how it comes about. But that it's virtual, that it is potential, it is not actual. There's no experiencing Oedipus. That's not how it works. Like, it's not part of the lived experience. It's necessarily reactional. It's not just from a political reactionary perspective, but it's also in response. It exists in response to things, but it's not an actual productive force. Actual is productive. The potential is very much reactive. And so when we say Oedipus is virtual, and that it's potential and not actual, means that Oedipus is ultimately a potential response to actual forces. But it is not an actual response to actual forces. Are you following? Because that's a fucking lot I just said.
So Oedipus is, like, in Nietzschean sense, is like a reactive force. That is,
Yes.
like the eternal return to nothingness. Or, like, the will to nothingness.
Resentment.
Right?
Resentment.
Yeah, resentment. Yeah.
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 It's
doesn't
a reactive
imply
force,
eternal
yes.
return. Yeah.
I think that's a fair way to put it. There's some edges there, but I think generally that's a fair way to put it. Because they say the whole point about this is to understand the conditions under which Oedipus arrives. An aggregate of, there's a lot of jargon here we're going to go through. An aggregate of departure, transfinite, constituted by all the objects, agents, relations of social desire and production, is reduced to a finite familial aggregate as an aggregate of arrival. Minimum 3 terms, one of which can and even must augment, but not to infinity. Naturally, Oedipus begins from a place of infinite potential, the infinite social field. And there's too many things. Like, it comes from the potential. That's a huge. The virtual is huge. It's like a fuck ton of stuff, but it gets reduced at arrival. Again, not lived, arrival. It gets reduced extremely. They use some specific words in here, but it's reduced to a finite familial aggregate as an aggregate of arrival. This limited endpoint that necessitates it being part of mommy, daddy, me, or specifically me or mommy, daddy, or a relationship of one of those. This is how we get fucked up. If you don't know, go for it.
Oh yeah. Can you say that the Oedipus as virtual would be something like Nietzsche's the ascetic principle?
Yes. It's pardon me. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's that principle that actually enslaves us to the to the social forces, right?
This plays slightly differently. Do you want to restate that real quick for me?
Yeah.
Also, I'm getting a lot of feedback. Sorry.
Yeah, because the idea of the virtual is the potential for certain forces of that is conditioned by the social, right? So there, according in the Nietzschean scheme, it is the ascetic principle.
Yeah, and this is where they differ just a little bit, because they're not necessarily talking about like social forces or like all of it's arriving at once, and these things are the lived experience. And as time goes on, and we sort of have this, the forces build up. Resentment comes from emergent properties of interaction based on how the will in Nietzsche is able to be visited or how forces are able to enact themselves. This is not drastically far from that. In the process of the actual, the virtual is necessarily conditioned. And because Oedipus is virtual and reactional, it arrives as an aggregate of departure. They use the term transfinite here. If you don't know set theory, pretty important to Deleuze and Anti-Oedipus and Thales and Plateau's. I'd recommend learning about it. Cantor's great. But the idea here is that it's this absolutely massive arrival space. The transfinite means it's across a huge amount of things. It's infinity. It's infinity, effectively infinity, mathematical infinity, not the infinite, but mathematical infinity, which is the collection of potentials. So it's slightly different than just like everything, but it's anything in mathematical set theory. With that stuff is constituted by the objects, agents, relations, the total social field, as well as social desiring production. So you have all of these things together that ultimately Oedipus starts from, but it arrives at, and that's the thing that's important. It's destination is diminutive. It's this finite, not transfinite, finite familial aggregate with an exceptionally limited endpoint. And that's because of how representation operates and how it works. And that's where they continue to say, I'm actually going to read a little bit further because I think it goes into this a little bit. Such an application, in fact, presupposes a fourth extrapolated mobile term, the abstract phallus charged with performing the folding or the correspondence. Big deal. But this application, I'll get to it. But this application effectively operates on the three persons who constitute the minimum familial constellation, or on their substitutes, father, mother, child. The fourth term that's here, the mobile term, this transferable function that creates the symbolic, which is the phallus. The process of symbolization creates this odd thing. In logica sense, in JK, I know you were there for that. The way that there is the something. There's what's the word for it in Greek that he uses? Starts with al. Shit. Doesn't matter. There's something that is able to be added or that is part of that process, that's able to castrate, that's able to remove the lived thing from the thing. When someone says dad, they're talking about dad, the symbol, but they're applying it to a person. They folded all of the complexity of that person into this triangle. You should read Leibniz's The Fold. They fold all of it into this, but there's something that does that, because that's not just a free exercise of things. There's something that has to happen, something extrable, this transferable function, the symbolic abstract phallus, which is the transcendent operator, which performs the actual assigning of these functional roles. And it's done mathematically, it's done topologically, and it's basically creates the triangle that's able to be done there from all of this complexity. And this is what they're talking about and driving at throughout all of this, is that it's not just Oedipus and this virtual, but as we start from the complexity, the object that actually, the machine that performs the interaction, the phallus, removes all of the lived experience, all of the possible actual that it is, because it's not actual, it's not lived, it's not embodied in anything, it can't be. But we're able to consider it as such because it's been castrated, and it is a castrating action. Oedipus naturally being reaction, naturally being virtual, reduced to this aggregate as an arrival. And this presupposes the extrapolated mobile term. But one does not stop there, since the three terms tend to be reduced to two. We don't often talk about how's your relationship with your mom and your dad. We ask about how are you doing? How is you and your dad? How are you and your mom? And for psychoanalysis, within the Oedipal complex, there's a relationship with the father, which is, we'll just say, estranged and difficult, because the father wants to kill the child for stealing the wife. The son wants to kill the father, is the idea. Or the scene of the terrible mother, where the mother kills the child or the father. And from those two, from those two, we pass into one in narcissism, which in no way precedes Oedipus, but is its product. As the destination happens, as the folding continues, as the phallus does this work, we're able to continually reproduce this mathematical reduction. He's straight up using set theory here to be applied towards how the symbolic operates. That's it. That's what he's doing here. This is not about a temporal priority. This isn't about placing things in temporality in different places. It is saying, actually, that this narcissism is not something that precedes Oedipus, but it is something that Oedipus produces by reducing from this transfinite set to finite set to further finite set that ultimately creates this causal derivation from the Oedipal process that sits in virtuality. This is not meant to be easy. This part is not meant to be easy at all. This is Deleuze bringing in a lot of shit. Guattari too, very much. But this is why we speak of an Oedipal narcissistic machine, at the end of which... What's up? Oh, cool. Everyone say hi to Heather.
Hello. Can they see me?
They can see you. This is why we speak of an Oedipal narcissistic machine, at the end of which the ego encounters its own death, as the zero term of a pure abolition that has haunted Oedipalized desire from the start and that is identified now at the end as Thanatos. Oedipus, go ahead.
Mind you, Brooks, what they mean Thanatos, they mean like Eros and Thanatos at the same time. Because Thanatos for Deleuze is kind of the creative part, right? The creative part that creates kind of like it's not destruction. It's not like destruction, but I don't know. Maybe I'm reading, maybe he formulated it differently, but it's very hard. Very hard.
Let me finish, because it's the entire structure of this paragraph works, and it's the reason they can say 43210 Oedipus is a race for death. It doesn't read well, but we're getting there, because we started with there are 4 parts to Oedipus. There's mommy, daddy, me plus the phallus, but really it's not just mommy, daddy, me and the phallus. It's father and child and the phallus. Well, no, it's not really that. It's just child or the father. Really, it's not that. It's just one in narcissism. And then, at the end, the ego encounters its own death, the zero term, a pure abolition that has haunted Oedipalized desire from the start, identified now at the end as Thanatos. This is the pure abolition of the multitudes of everything that symbolic structure creates. Symbolic structure and representation do not just crush things into a few things. They continually crush things into nothing. Over and over and over, further reducing and further reducing and further reducing. The death drive is in Oedipus because Oedipus ends in a 0 point. The Oedipal process tends that way from the beginning. From everything to 4 to 3 to 2 to 1 to nothing. Pure abolition. Total and complete negation. That's what they're driving at here. That's the point. Oedipus is a race for death. The entire process is oriented around death. It is both competition and trajectory of various forces, but it is doing that. It is moving from the 4, including the phallus, to the familial triangle, to the dyadic relation, to narcissistic unity, to death. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. That's the entire point. Psychoanalysis is a death cult. Ultimately. And it's using set theory to make the point.
Because it killed the potential for any kind of...
We go from the transfinite thing, which is all of it, which is a cross set, transfinite set, which is everything, to a very reduced set of, you could say a set of sets. Set mom. That's the axiom. Set mom, set dad, set me, and set phallus. But ultimately, really, it's just mommy, daddy, me. Ultimately, it's me and dad. Ultimately, it's me, and now it's nothing. Yeah. Did that help at all, Noah? JK? Noah?
Yeah, thanks. That's great.
Our narcissism doesn't precede Oedipus. Oedipus doesn't fix narcissism. It is produced by it by the reduction of things to mommy, daddy, me, phallus. Mommy, daddy, me, mommy, daddy, mommy, me, nothing. It ends, it tends to death.
So it fits in with Nietzsche's idea of nihilism, right? The principle of the ascetic principle leads to a kind of denial of life.
Yes.
So just, there's no life, there's just death.
Yeah, it all tends towards that for Nietzsche, and I think that's their point here as well, that the symbolic necessarily continually pushes towards the crushing, the essentializing, the symbolic, the representational, and it's not doing it in a way where it's like, oh, now we have 20, and now I have 80, we went bigger. It's like, no, it's always about reduction, always about reduction. Like death drive is the telos of psychoanalysis. That's how I'd probably phrase it. All right. So in sets, their contents are always determined by rule or definition or an axiom. So for use of sets, is this rule despotic or Oedipus? Capitalism. Isn't it fun? You got to bring all that stuff in. For the way the reduction happens, it happens in time as desire is crushed, turned to symbolic through the despotic. And then that symbolic is then turned into axiomatic rather than something that is from on high or the experience of direct power, which is where the despotic comes from. These things that it's driving at is the push. And you know what? That's actually Saturday. I'm set to do because we're starting a cinema series reading. Ben decided to start it on Sundays, and I've got to prep for that because I need that. Thursdays we have Klasowski. We have a bunch of readings going that are it's too great. I'm going to do a stream later this week. We'll make it about that question, because I think that's a fair talking about how set theory implicates this and comes into this, because their semiotic setup basically is Hjelmslev, and Hjelmslev is primarily a mathematician. So it's complicated. An ending of desire, not an ending of desire, Jimbo. Because it never actually hits zero. The point for them is that it's always tending to death. This is why Thanatos is part of things for Freud. That's why it's always crushing the life out of everything, reducing as much as possible. So it's me, about me, the individual, the narcissistic, whatever it is. But with that, I need to go get food. Heather just ran to go, and I have to plug it. Are you aware of free groups? We'll do that, and then I'll probably end the stream. Does everyone here know what free groups are? This is not related to Anti-Oedipus at all. We'll continue next week from here, blah, blah, blah. I'll do something later this week. But do you know what a free group is? It's a real thing. People give shit away. It's awesome. Look one up in your area. They're great. People just give shit away. We do. A lot of people do it. They're actually very small groups, but there's literally hundreds of thousands of them in America and elsewhere. They're Buy Nothing groups is the name. So recommend it. But I need to go get food. I'm starting to get a headache. I need to get more caffeine. In France, in Quebec, they're up there. Oh, for sure, they're up there. Buy Nothing. Search for Buy Nothing groups and your city, your area, zip code. You'd be stunned. But for you on YouTube, I'm going to send you over to Sunday because he was kind enough to not, I think because he wanted to join the reading and listen. So he was kind enough not to trample over me. So I'll send you guys over to that. Always fun, always good. And highlight of my week, if you like what I do, please do send super chats, memberships, subscribe, like, share with your friends. Also, Patreon, patreon.com/DGQC. If you have a cup of coffee a month you can spare, goes a long way. And of course, head to discord.gg/DGQC and join our readings. We got our cinema series starting up this weekend. Klasowski's noon on Thursday, plus a bunch of other readings. It's crazy how many we have going. It's wonderful. What do you got, LJ?
Oh, The best time right now for me is Friday afternoon or night. That's the update. You can tell me in private if it's.
All right, I will annoy you shortly then, LJ. And we'll figure it out. But everyone else, thank all of you. It's lovely, and I will chat with you all soon enough. And off they go. And we are